We'll call to order the Brushy Creek Regional Utility Authority Board of Directors meeting today, Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 at 6:05 p.m. We'll go ahead and call to order.
President Thompson.
Present.
Vice President Duffy.
Here.
Secretary Flores.
Here.
Director Anderson. Director Kirkland.
Here.
Director Baker.
Here.
All right, we'll move to item 3, citizen communication. Do we have any? Not tonight. Okay, thank you. I'll move to item 4, approval of the minutes. Consider approval of the BCRUA meeting minutes from April 27, 2022.
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve in a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Move on to item 5A, staff reports. Consider an update from General Manager regarding BCRUA water demand and the City of Leander regarding Leander water supply status.
Thank you, Madam President. The board requested that I report monthly on the water of the member cities' water use from the treatment plant. And every week we report the daily and peak hour water use by each diversion point. And then we compare it to the maximums agreed to in the master contract. So I am going to walk through the values, and I've been asked to provide a presentation to help understand the context of them. So I have a PowerPoint presentation. And so I'm just going to walk through each city as I go through the numbers so you can kind of see how they relate. So the first one is the City of Round Rock, and looking at their water use. The red line on the graph is the capacity allocation from the water treatment plant. And then you can see the lines at the bottom. The orange line represents the peak hour use and the average daily use. And this is for May. And I can provide this monthly so you can see what the latest is. So you could see that Round Rock's their maximum day use is ranging between 6 and 19%. I've got the average day use is 19% of their capacity, and the peak hour is 43%. And then the next slide is Cedar Park. Cedar Park is, again, the red line is their capacity allocation, and then they're ranging between 12 and 18% for their average day, and then 12 to 18% on their peak hour. And then Leander's the next. Leander's ranges between 47 and 60% of their average daily use, and 76 to 94% of the peak hour capacity. And then the next slide shows how the demands of the three cities are related to the total BCRUA plant capacity. So you can see that the plant right now has a 32.5 million gallons per day capacity, and the total use is about 12 MGD on average, about 36% of the total capacity. So I hope this helps, I guess, characterize better the numbers that I'm going to be providing, but I'd like your feedback as far as that's helpful, or if you'd like to see anything different.
So of the capacity for the plant, with all the cities, we're only using 32%?
36.
36,
about,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
I couldn't see that.
You can see it kind of ranges.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And you also had requested that a Leander representative provide an update on Leander's water supply, and we have Dan Grimsboe here to do that once again.
Good evening.
All right. Good evening to the BCRUA President Board members. I'm Dan Grimsboe, the Executive Director of Infrastructure for the City of Leander. And today I am providing a presentation basically outlining the resolution that the City of Leander City Council passed this past council, I think. May 5th, and then which is and supporting the comprehensive plan for the management of water system treatment, capacity, and demand. So I provided a hard copy for each of the members. I know we had sent the link, but sometimes life gets in the way, and so I figured I'd take the time to provide everybody a hard copy of said resolution supporting said plan or the strategic plan the city manager outlined in his 2 memos. Okay, so real quick, many of the slides that are on this presentation have been provided to the City Council in a couple of different City Council workshops. So Councilmember Thompson will be familiar maybe with many of them, but for you all, it's been put out there, so it's not like you're seeing, people will not be seeing this for the first time, is guess what I'm saying. So we're going to kind of go over the focus of the recommendations, which are those 6 areas, and I'll kind of talk about each one of them briefly and what we're doing, what we have done and what we're currently going to do and what we're going to do in the future for water management. So currently, this is our situation. We get our plants rated for 12 million gallons per day, and for a day, we could probably get that, but it's really limited to about 10 right now, and we've actually have that actually annotated in our peak projections. And then the water that we get from the BCRUA is 15.2 million gallons per day of the 32, which you just saw the graph of by the other cities. And so the ultimate, at the end of the day, when the plant's built out, we're going to get 50 million gallons per day. The next big one for us, which is important, and that's the one that we're hoping that we get focus on top of other projects, and I have a slide that talks about that, but it's Phase 2A, which will provide the city, from the plant itself, 32 million gallons per day. And that will get us to the 44 million gallons, which will put us on the other side, literally, of the water line. And so we'll have more than enough water. So here was the city of Leander, and not too recent past, actually. And just quickly going over it, you can see we have 5 different pressure planes. And at that time, say even a couple years back, we had the one intake from the BCRA, which is right here. And then we had the other one, which is right in this area for the Chorizo. And then the our water treatment plant, Sandy Creek, actually went to Crystal Falls, which is right here. And you can kind of see the arrows, how they went through the old part of the city and then kind of worked their way up. But we really didn't have anything going, if you want to say, east to west, mostly north to south. Just for reference for the next one, Liberty Hill is up here, and we provide them water. And then Georgetown is in this direction, and we have a connection with them over here, which is not shown on this current map, but is there. So what have we done over the past, basically, year and a half, the 2 years? Well, in FY21, we completed these 3 projects. And so San Gabriel Booster Pump Station, and I'm going to show you the map of all these, but I just want to give you a feel for how many are out there. So we've completed those 3 projects, which will help move water throughout the city. And they were $5 million, $1.7 million, and $1.5 million, respectively, down. And FY22, we're getting ready to bid out the San Gabriel elevated storage tank, and that's going to be about $5 million. And then you can see where it says we're in design, and we're in design for the next 4 projects that will help manage water throughout the system. And those projects range from $5 million to the Sandy Creek, which is about $16 million for the improvements. So FY23, you can see where they were being designed now, and then next year we're going to start construction on many of those. The one that's probably kind of important to not only us but the other cities as related to also controlling peak demand, which you've heard about, and not exceeding our limit, is probably the Ronald Reagan and the Terminus Pump Station. Part of the initial plan of the water plant was to have a peaking factor of a certain amount, and in Chapter 8 it kind of indicated 1.6. But for various reasons, it was not 1.6. It was closer to 1 because the cities would put in their own storage that they would need. And in that chapter, it indicates that Leander would put in phase 3, which is still a ways away, but we need it sooner, 2 million and 5 million at take points 1 and 2. Well, the terminus pump station is now going to be really where our take point is, which is tank point 3, which is the new one, and you'll see that in a minute. And the other one is the Ronald Reagan, and that one's going to be designed, so that's the 5 million gallon storage tank, and the terminus pump station will be the 2 million gallon storage tank, as per the kind of the initial design. Those are, you see, were actually not designed to be done or for years out, but not only those two projects, but several of these projects have been moved up dramatically from the initial water master plan. And then you can see the last couple where they fall into, as far as this one will help the northwest part of the city and also Liberty Hill. And then this was when we're going to start construction for the Ronald Reagan. So here's where we look at today. So the ones in blue are what we've completed. We completed that 24-inch line going across, which has helped. We completed that pump station, which now moves the water from here in that direction. You can see that this was all red, which was on this pressure plane, but now it's on this pressure plane because of that movement of water. What that allowed was it took pressure off of this pump right here, which provided water to that, kind of that whole area and to Liberty Hill, and we were getting really low pressure drops in this area. Well, we are not going to have that situation any further. The other thing is that we completed this connection here, which now allows water to be distributed through this whole area here now more easily. And once we get the terminus pump station, so all the ones in green are the ones that are either currently under construction or design, mostly in design. The San Gabriel elevated storage tank and the Treviso, or hopefully will be built sooner than later. The Lake Line water line is well under design, and I'm hoping that one gets under construction here real soon, which is this one, which will also help push water up into this area. What we haven't, you'll see that these lines all popped up. They're not quite on the list yet, but we do have this one, which is also another one going, as you see, from east to west, allow water to go that direction, and that one is under design and should be under construction hopefully in the next year. So you can see that we made quite a few improvements and moved quite a few projects up to facilitate bettering the distribution system. That doesn't help the treatment part of it. That's the BCRUA. That's Leander's plan, is to have that plant built. It's been the plan since the beginning. That $50 million will take Leander quite a few years into the future. It's just getting there. Any questions before kind of move on with the Leander's projects?
That's what I was just getting ready to ask you, for those watching online, to clarify how all of these improvements actually impact BCRUA, our partnership with BCRUA.
It doesn't affect.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't affect that at all. It's going to help. It's going to help us manage water better and be able to control demand better, especially when we get the required ground storage tanks in. But until we get that in, we do have concern with our. And remember, the BCRU plant is the plant that Leander really does use. So when we're using the full amount, it's because that's our plant, and we plan to use it, and it's going to be the primary source of water for the future. Sandy Creek may get some further expansion, but not probably anytime soon. So BCRUA. So this is important for us. So right now, these are the 4 projects, which is actually quite a bit. We have the raw water line that's under design, and then Phase 1D, which will provide Leander an additional probably $3 million. We were hoping closer to $5 million. But I think we've talked before that the raw water line is going to put some restrictions on flow, which will limit the amount of water that we'll actually receive for Phase 1D. Phase 2 is actually the deep water intake, but that doesn't add any water. That's the mechanism for getting raw water to the 3 water plants. And then Phase 2, which is the phase that it has not started, that's the phase that Leander, and we've talked about it a little bit in the OC, that's the phase that we really need to get moving forward. Because that's the one that will get Leander the water that allows Leander to be on the other side of, if you want to say, the deficit water line. So our partner entities, we have several, and there you can see them there. Liberty Hill, our LCRA is where we receive our water from, and right now we receive 24,000 acre-feet per contract. We're actually submitting an application next week for an additional 10,000 acre-feet. It was approved by City Council, and so we're submitting that. Liberty Hill, we have a contract with them for 600 acre-feet, which is about 1 million gallons per day for their max amount. They came to us, in my understanding, they were kind of promised, but when Gene and I kind of were learning the situation, and we talked to them when I first got on board, we had to tell them, no, we can't provide you any more water, because they have an additional 600 acre-feet that they can buy out of Lake Travis from LCRA. And so they would love for somebody to treat that, and unfortunately we're not able to do that, and I had to let them know that was the case. So they have the 1,200 acre-feet that they can receive from Lake Travis. Our contract with Liberty Hill is for 40 years, so we are their water supply, at least for that amount. Georgetown is a temporary contract that was initiated, and they initiated that contract with Leander, much the same reason why we can't initiate the contract with Liberty Hill is because their growth is tremendous, and they are, if you was to go look at their presentation, they gave their council, and I have one with me, their red line looks actually probably worse than Leander's. So they're actually came to us to buy water from us for 7 years, and then and I'll let Round Rock go in more detail, but they're also buying water from Round Rock to support them in the summer to get through until they get their water plant built. Well, they just contracted out for $175 million to build a 44 million gallon per day water plant. Talking with Chelsea, who's the Public Works Director for Georgetown, they're really pushing to get it done in 3 years to 4 years. For me personally, that's great, because as soon as they get that built, then hopefully we can get them off that contract, which will help us. The next two, of course, are Cedar Park and Round Rock, who are our BCR partners, and each own a percentage of the water plant. From a water standpoint, at the end of the day, Cedar Park will get 15 million gallons per day when the plant's completely built out, and Round Rock will get 40 million gallons per day, and then Leander will be 50, which rounds it out to about 105, 106. The last one is our partners internally. We've had meetings already with LSID associated with level loading our peak demands. So we've had conversations with the Homeowners Association and the school district, because right now the school district kind of waters basically on 2 days. And what we're going to ask them to do, and that's based on their address, and unfortunately it was billing by maybe actual location. So we're working with them to figure out what days we can water the school so we can spread it out over the week, and so they're not causing a demand on 2 days. Same with the large homeowners associations. So conservation efforts. These are some of the things that we're currently doing. One, we're staying in phase 2 conservation status, which is once a week watering and on a certain day. We're just about to put out for contract our AMI system, which stands for Automatic Meter Infrastructure. The surrounding cities have that. I've used Cedar Parks as an example. Theirs is outstanding. They have the whole look on your phone, see how much you're using, real good stuff. So we're trying to get that so we can let people know themselves how much water they're using, and so they don't know, they can know daily, vice month to month. Reclaim Water. Council approved $2.5 million for us to continue to work on that. The Reclaim Water system consists of a filling station at our wastewater treatment plant for trucks they use for construction and other means. And then we're also building a 12-inch line out the north line for them to use for their irrigation and makeup water for their ponds. And we're hoping to get other customers like the community college, Horizon Apartments, or Horizon Lakes subdivision, and others. The tiered water rates just took an effect, and they're doing great. And then we'll talk about the next couple associated with some slides because we got some good data on those. So what are we doing to let people know kind of where we're at? Well, we've done all these things right here. We sent out mailers to all the residents. We have several, our PIO, and we have two now, are working on several messages to various people. Again, I've talked about LISD and the Homeowners Association. And then we met with the last one was really, really good. I kind of bragged about Georgetown's campaign, Let Your Lawn Relax. They actually have commercials on TV where someone's sitting in their backyard, sitting in a chair and throwing a fishing pole out there, and it says, "You're relaxing, let your lawn relax." So we talked about that campaign that they have about getting people not to have emerald green lawns, but if they're brown, that's okay. So that was a good meeting. They have a pretty well-established program, and they gave us some information about that whole campaign that they're working on. So that was I thought, a very good meeting. This is the flyer that we sent out showing what phase that we're in, which is phase 2, and we're trying to prevent from going to phase 3 and definitely trying to prevent going to phase 4. So our irrigation pilot program, this is one where we're, and other cities have this, but we're kind of starting off to see how it goes. We're hiring a licensed irrigation vendor to go help homeowners with their irrigation. It's amazing how many don't know how to use their irrigation system, and they just let it run, and they just pay the bill. I'm not sure. I think Mary would kill me if our bill was, $1,000 for water, but we've had a couple of those, and it's amazing. The other important aspect of that is that the city, this irrigation, is also going to go check all the city facilities, all our parks, all our facilities, to ensure that the city itself, through our irrigation systems, are working properly, so that we're not wasting any water. So we're doing that twofold. So our conservation coordinator, that's another one of our big initiatives that we're doing for the city, and that's why one of the reasons why we met with Georgetown's conservation program manager, if you want to say, and her team. We kind of took this and fast-tracked it, and so you can kind of see some of the things that we went and the timelines that we were looking for, and to come up to a little bit more data. It was amazing the amount, and the short time we had, the amount of applications that we received. Gene and I and Mike, we're going to be interviewing 2 on this Thursday, and then 2 next week, actually. So we're hoping that one of the 4, they all have real good applications and resumes, but one of the 4 will be selected and want to come work for the city of Leander, helping us with our conservation program. The other aspect as part of the memo was the BCRUA communications, and we continue that. These are kind of the areas that we work. The last one is one that we've set up, kind of a bi-weekly meeting with Councilmember Thompson as related to what the city's doing, and kind of cross-referencing it with the BCRUA's activities to see how we're gelling. The first one, we continue to work with the BCRUA staff to figure out how we get our 3 take points to work together, because we don't have those tanks. So it's kind of a balancing act for us a little bit. And so we're constantly working on trying to optimize those take points, or if you want to call it entry points. And so I'm sorry about that. And the other one that we have a meeting with the OC is to talk about the peaking factor. That peaking factor would help us greatly. What it basically does is, for a short time, it allows you, if you want to say, to exceed in a given hour. So we're looking for a peaking factor of 1.2. And if you looked at right now the peaking factor that we agreed to, and it's in the Amendment 6 of the contract, it basically says we have an amount of 15.2 million gallons per day, and our rate is limited to 10,528 gallons per minute. So that's a peaking factor of 1, because your contract amount and your rate amount are exactly the same. If we had a peaking factor of 1.2, that would give us a 18.7 million gallon per day, but more importantly, it would give us an instantaneous rate of 12,638 gallons per minute. And so for a period of time where we have a little bit of a peak demand and a short period of time, that peaking demand allows us a little bit of flexibility there during operations. Peak demand is pretty common in every kind of water or wastewater plant that there is. So we're going to talk about what that means. We've had a memo that was drafted via the BCRUA that talked about it. There's a real possibility to it, so we're going to look forward to continuous talks and hopefully get that established. This is not my forte, but I threw these up here because we are also working these areas, and if we wanted to go more in depth, I would bring the expert, Robin, in. But you can see that we're trying to follow the comprehensive plan. Whatever piece of property is zoned for, we're trying to hold to that. And the other one, and I know there's several that are in review, but we're trying to do this phasing of residential developments. And one was already approved through City Council, where they build only so many houses for the first 2 years, the second 2 years, the third 2 years. And so we have a couple of, if you want to call planning concepts that we're working on. And then we also have, along with the planning, landscaping changes that we're making, and those are in the process of being approved. So those recommendations are also moving forward. Now, I will remind everybody, again, before I go with questions here, is that the BCRA is our plant, and we actually need to have it run, and we're going to use the majority of the water, the same with Sandy Creek, because it makes good sense. The more water we use for it, the per 1,000 gallons, actually, the less you pay probably for the actual water because of the amount of money you're putting into it to build it. The other part is that it's so important to us that the Sandy Creek and the BCRUA are actually in our emergency preparedness plan for the state. So via the SB3 bill, that plan is part of our system, and it's actually in that plan to make sure that it runs. And so we had to work with BCRUA to facilitate getting the emergency preparedness plan from them and then incorporating it into ours and sending it to the state to see if they agree with that. So this is not a backup plant, and you can see the different levels of the other cities, and they might be using $1 million or $2 million. And that's great because it might be for their future use and for future economic. But for us, that's a real plant. We're using that plant, and we're using the whole capacity of that plant, and we'll continue to use the future capacity of that plant. And the last thing I reminded council is that if everything gets done in 5 years, we'll be above water, literally. If we had that plant built today, and we had that 44 million gallons, and if you pulled up the chart, that's been kind of indicated that we're in trouble the next kind of 5 years with that difference, and that's been discussed, and that's true, but you just seen everything that we're doing to facilitate managing that. If it was built today, what that chart also shows you is that we could have all that growth that has currently happened, and we would still have 3 or 4 million gallons difference once phase 2A is built. So the plant is there for that growth to occur. Unfortunately, it kind of occurred more quickly, and for various reasons, the BCR plant didn't happen maybe as quickly as it could have for the city of Leander, not knowing the growth that would happen. But I do remind people that if it was here today, we could have all that growth over the next 5 years, and phase 2A would still support said growth. Unfortunately, we're not there, and it's 5 years away, so we have to get to that point. And once we're there, then we'll be on track for having the water that Leander needs until 2040, or maybe far beyond, because once we put these initiatives in place and people actually start using less water, which Round Rock has a great story about that, and so does the city of San Antonio, where they had a high flow, and then they had a situation where people couldn't use the water, and then they never hardly went back to the level that they were ever at, because people have been conserving all along. And so when you conserve, you don't have to build future infrastructure. So if we can actually get people in the next 5 years to really conserve and maintain that, well, then the BCRA will last, instead of maybe 15 years or 20 years, it might last 35 years. I can't predict the future, but, you know, the potential's there. So standing by for any questions.
All right, anybody have any questions? Oh.
All right.
I had two questions. I don't know if it's for Ms. Bondi or for yourself, but the ultimate build-out of 105 MGDs, when is that forecast for? When is that expected? Anybody? Or did I misunderstand that?
Well, I don't.
I don't
Problem is,
know. Aaron probably could answer.
yeah, I'm going to let that to the expert.
Roughly 2060.
2060. Okay. And then when I heard the possibility or the question perhaps to be posed in the future about 1.2 times take, that concerns me, because I guess I wonder, you know, do we put ourselves at risk? Or is that 1.2 times take for Leander only, or is that all cities?
That would be
Or-
all cities.
Because that would just seem like that would perhaps position us for a future crisis, perhaps, if everybody's taking more than there actually is. So,
Well, that's why there was a study done to facilitate looking at and through modeling to see if that was a real possibility. And based on the memo from K. Freeze, incorporated through the BCRA, there is a possibility for that 1.2 to occur.
And it declines later, right?
Say again?
It declines later. The report showed that.
Well, it's
you
like
could only
anything else.
sustain a peaking factor.
Right. We'd have to. There's modeling and then there's real life, and so at some point you kind of have to incorporate real life. Does it mean that we don't change that? Well, yeah. You know, we changed the contract with Amendment 6, but for Leander in the current situation, it would be useful for us. The other cities are, you know, currently not at that point. The peaking factor, I think, becomes more critical when everybody's using the full amount, and the memo talks about that.
okay. It's just more of a layman's question, because I mean, certainly I'm not anywhere close to being an expert on any of this stuff, but just a question that came to mind as he mentioned that.
So the operating committee is going to meet to talk about that, as well as following up on the.
So I have an analogy for kind of peaking factor for layman's terms, and it might sound foolish, but I couldn't think of it.
Did you, because I know we
haven't
talked
given,
about it.
I know, and I
the
haven't given,
illustration.
and I owe you, I
Okay.
owe you this. But back in the day, before water systems were probably as good, and you have low flow equipment and et cetera, pressures weren't as good, and you would be in your shower, and someone would flush the toilet, and you would be scolded. And the reason you would be scolded is because the water line, the cold water line, was a straight shot to the shower. There wasn't any surge tank in there to cover. So when you lost that three gallons instantly, there was a difference because you didn't adjust the mixing valve. But on the hot water side, you had a surge tank. That was called the water heater. And so it's running to steady state. You know, it has a flux in there. So that peaking factor is that basically that toilet flush. It happens instantaneously. All of a sudden, everybody turns on their sprinklers, our program at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then for a period of time, the water, because there's no tank, we don't have a tank there yet, it's a straight shot, the water that the plant's producing can't keep up with what's being put out there. And so if you don't keep up with it, one of the things that can happen is that pressures drop. And if you let that happen below 20 psi, then it becomes a boil water notice. And so that becomes a kind of a safety and health concern if we can prevent that, even working with the partner cities, that and for various reasons, Leander is where it is today, and you saw that we're trying to do a lot of things to overcome the growth we've had over years. But the last thing we want to do is put the system where people are getting scolded, literally, by not trying to figure out how to maintain that peak demand and managing it and not letting pressure drop below 20 psi. So in a strictest sense, that peak demand is that quick, all of a sudden, and then your toilet fills back up and everything's good to go. Well, we are working on building those 2 water tanks at the take point so that when everybody turns their sprinklers on, that 2 million or 5 million gallon storage tank, the water starts going down slowly, like it might be in a water heater, and it covers that instantaneous. And the water plant keeps providing water at a steady state. And then when everybody's sprinklers turn off 30 minutes later, the toilet's full, then the tank fills back up, and the plant might turn its pumps off based on the tank level, or if there's a steady state and the tank stays at a certain level, a certain number of pumps will run. So if there's 5 pumps, maybe you only need 3 of them running to maintain that constant flow. But that's kind of where Leander is that we have that straight line going, and unfortunately, we don't have the hot water heater, and people turn their water sprinkler systems on, other things all at the same time, and we get that instantaneous water demand for a short period of time, and that's the peaking factor would help with that.
Okay, thank you.
So, all of this is good, and it's a good step forward in the process. I still have problems with this peaking issue, and I don't think it should be the partner cities having to assist. The fact of the matter is you sold water to other cities, and now our residents in Cedar Park, I won't speak for them, have additional costs associated with that. So, I just want to make sure that y'all are able to fill these water tanks overnight so that, especially in the middle of summer when peak is high. An off topic on these smart meters, you need to hire somebody to monitor the smart meters. One of the best things about the smart meters is that you can tell when HOAs have breaks in their line. They're not.
Yeah, but most of the cities around here get their water from Lake Travis. So Lake Travis provides water for a slew of people that have only surface water, and we're one, and many of the cities around here are the same. You're right, the evaporation rate for any given surface water is high, and you have to take that into account when you're trying to determine your firm yield. And LCRA and the city of Corpus Christi, who owns 2 lakes, go through water modeling and great efforts to determine what their firm yield is based on the worst drought of record that's been recorded, to ensure that when straws are being dipped in there, that they have the proper amount of acreage being provided, And then when they start getting to limits that they already have in place based on that firm yield, then the customers know that they have to start cutting back. So, yeah, that evaporation rate is there, but it's also part of the whole modeling process related to firm yield, and so they know how much water they have, people dealing with surface water. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Director Kirkland, I was just going to ask, I know you said you appreciate everything that's being done on the Leander side, but you didn't think it was going to be enough. Do you have any other suggestions or things that you would want to see Leander present going forward that would show more effort or show that we can achieve the things that we're saying we are trying to achieve now that weren't in place before? So going forward to narrow the focus of what you present to BCRUA at the meetings, I have made a list of things that we'd want to see, and please chime in if there are additional things that the board wants to hear presented from Leander. But we would want an update on the conservation efforts of the new conservation specialist or coordinator that's being hired. Updates on the AMI system, where we are in the process. I know it's out for bid right now, but where we are in that process. Any updates of the impact of the tiered rates, having that update. Updates on permits. So I don't know if you would want to have Director Griffin here or if y'all would just be able to provide that. Direct updates on the peak day levels and making the peak day levels, because we talked about having people change their water cycles so we could manage that better. And the updates, what's going on with Leander ISD and the HOAs since we've reached out to them. Also updates on the pilot, the irrigation pilot program and where we are with that. And lastly, updates on the peaking factor once y'all meet with the OC, if that's all worked out. Are there any additional updates that you need to see?
On the discussion with the peaking factor to go up to the 1.2, like who's the deciding, like, does the board give the blessing to that ultimately, or I mean I'd be kind of curious what those discussions look like because I know you're coming from a place of like defense and this makes sense for going forward, but kind of to
I'm going to direct that question to the general
Mr.
manager.
Flores, Mr. Flores is concerned about the risk for the rest of us. You know, that would be my concern too.
Yes, this is something we've been talking about for quite a while, that the Leander had presented a study that had been done by their consultant on peaking factor, and the Operations Committee deliberated and determined that they were not supporting a peaking factor above 1.0, and that is what, as Dan mentioned, went into the contract that was approved in December. And he wants to raise the issue up again, so we'll, convene the operating committee and talk about it again, and we'll then report back to the board. Along those lines, following up on what we had talked about last board meeting, we are also continuing to develop a process to bring to you to address any possible exceedances by a partner, and also the process to implement control valves. We hope to have them in place, if possible, by summer 2023. And we'll bring all that to you for recommendations, considerations, and any actions going forward.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 6, resolutions. Consider a resolution authorizing the president to execute a construction contract with a Thales-SAIC joint venture for the Phase 2 raw water delivery system project.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, on this historic occasion of the board considering award of the Phase 2 deepwater intake construction contract, I'd like to reflect on the efforts that have brought us to this day. And then after that, Aaron Archer is going to give you a presentation related to the review of the consultants and the selection process. So way back in 1997, the Texas Water Development Board conducted a study called the Trans-Texas Water Program Study. It was done for the entire state, but there was one done for this particular region. And then that was followed by a West Williamson County Regional Water System study. And both of these identified a future deep water intake near where this facility is located. But it was around 2005 and 2006 where the cities really initiated discussions about a regional water partnership to meet future water supply needs. And they, through the discussions, and many of those who participated in that are here. I've been so fortunate to have all the institutional knowledge of the development of this project. They determined their needs could best be met by joining together in a single large regional water supply partnership, essentially to create a relatively drought-proof water delivery system out of Lake Travis. And they determined to plan for an interim floating intake, but it always envisioned a permanent deep water intake and pump station. In fact, I have an article from the American Statesman from 2006 that talks about the partnership. I'd be glad to circulate that, but it mentions the deep water intake. And here it is, 2022. So in 2007, BCRUA was formed. In 2009, BCRUA issued $182 million for Phase 1A and began operations in 2012. In 2014, BCRUA acquired the pump station site, and then 2 years later, the maintenance building site. In 2016, the preliminary engineering report was complete. And in 2018, we acquired the Texas Water Development Board SWIFT funds for final design. Now, some of you are starting to say, okay, yeah, I was here when that happened. We acquired permits from or negotiated agreements with the Corps of Engineers, the City of Austin, Travis County, LCRA, Pedernales Electric Co-op, the Village of Valente, Balcones Canyonlands Preserve, and the TCEQ. And most of those were multi-year processes, if not almost decades. And then acquired land rights on over 200 parcels. So I want to take a moment and give kudos first to the owner team, the BCRUA staff, the cities of Cedar Park, Leander, and Round Rock, including the engineers who are the ones who are faithfully attending the meetings and have reviewed everything that has ever been thought about, analyzed, reported, and have given amazing input. And because they're all running their own systems, and so they're all experts in their own right. So frankly, having three heads coming together to make decisions is, I imagine, making better decisions than almost any other project who doesn't have the kind of partnership that we have. Of course, the financial directors and their staff have figured out how to make all this work financially. And our attorneys, we have wonderful attorneys from each city, and they have worked together as a fantastic team. I mean, really, just all problem solving, rarely a conflict that hasn't been able to be worked out. And all the BCRUA boards, I mean, you all have gone through some rough stuff with how we have, disturbed the peace as we've moved this large regional project forward. Also, particularly want to give kudos to our consultants. Aaron Archer has been our faithful leader and from Walker Partners. Drew Harden from Friesen Nichols. You probably don't know some of these consultants, but Schnabel Engineering is their tunneling consultant. K. Friesen Associates worked on a lot of the elements. And Cobb Finley did all our real estate. And you may remember Lori Bible, who used to come to the meeting, but she could talk anybody into an easement, even though it may have taken a long time to do it. So all these efforts bringing us to today, when we will ask the board to consider approval of construction of this long-planned deep water intake. Now I'm going to ask Aaron to come up and summarize the contractor proposal selection process.
Thank you. Good evening. Let's see, here we go. Okay, I have a pretty brief slide deck, but I wanted to tell you guys what we've been working on for the last 2 months as we've gone through procurement. Oh, I was going to do them one at a time. Okay. Well, we opened proposals back on March 22nd, and we received a total of 6 proposals. We were doing this as a competitive sealed proposal procurement process, not a traditional low bid delivery. Of those 6 proposals, 1 was determined to be non-responsive. We then took those proposals and we evaluated them on a combination of qualifications and experience and also cost. Broken roughly in half, 50% of the scoring went to cost and 50% went to quals and experience. We received in those 5 responsive bids cost ranging from a low of about $225 million to a high of about $360 million. And I'll tell you, that's one of the highest spreads I've ever seen in a project. It really indicates to me how contractors are struggling right now in these economic conditions to figure out how to handle things like labor shortages and inflation and escalation and supply chain issues. Each of them kind of approached it a very different way. And in that spread from 225 to 360 millions, we didn't have the costs lumped on one end or the other. They really were kind of staggered throughout that entire range. The cost proposals that we received from those contractors also had separate proposals within them for pump procurement. Because those pumps are really the heart of the project, we wanted to have the opportunity to look at pricing and qualifications from the pump provider, not just the contractor. And with all of the proposals that we received, the pump proposer, the manufacturer that we selected was Endar from Spain, which is a facility that we went back and visited a few years ago to confirm that they had the production capabilities for the project. The highest ranked proposer, once we went through the review process, which took a lot of time and a lot of energy with the team, is the Thale SAK joint venture, two separate companies coming together to form a JV. And you can see the scoring in the table below for the different categories that we had arranged: cost at 50%, their team structure and organization at 15%, their experience and their references at 20%, and then another 15% for their project approach. We did, after completing this scoring evaluation, scheduled and conducted a negotiation with Thale SAK. And I have a final negotiated proposal amount of $224,786,835. So let me tell you guys kind of where we go from here, because we're quickly moving through the award process. First, the funding for the contract, as you guys may remember, comes from the 2021 SWIFT loans as well as cash funds that Round Rock is providing. The Leander City Council will consider this construction contract tomorrow, I guess in this facility. And then Cedar Park and Round Rock councils will meet the following Thursday on May 26th to consider the construction contract. Once we get through those three meetings, we then need to go through a final step with the Texas Water Development Board to get their approval as our funding agency. And once we get that approval from them, we can issue a notice to proceed to the contractor, which we anticipate occurring roughly in the mid-June time period. We'll start working on scheduling a pre-construction conference in NTP within the next couple of weeks. Any questions on the procurement process?
Thank you, Aaron. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
So are you done, or you have more to present?
I'm done. That's it.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So to your comment about, it's tough for that spread and the delta and the bids, and it's, what a variance it was. I mean, how do we as a board, how do you as doing your part, how did we build in contingencies into that number? Can you at least address that to the general public? And then perhaps, would we expect to see, not cost overruns, but cost overruns in the form of just change orders in the future? And do we have a number what we think is going to be? I mean, it's so hard to predict, right? There's no crystal ball, but can you at least address some of those thoughts, how you guys approached it?
Absolutely. So from the contractor's perspective, as they're putting together their bid numbers, they're looking at a number of factors. A fairly unique thing about the Thale SAK joint venture, which I think allowed them to deliver the project at a lower cost, is that they've got large projects occurring right now, Thale in the city of Round Rock, and then SAK, the other arm of their joint venture in San Antonio, with both of those projects wrapping up at the time that this project starts. So they've got large, specialized local crews that can move over to this project with the timing being just right. And that was a major factor, I think, in those guys being able to work on their cost. Now, from our perspective, when we last put together an engineer's opinion of probable construction cost, which occurred about a year ago, I mean, the whole world kind of turned upside down. We had thought that project would come in closer to $200 million, but of course, between the escalation alone, all the disruptions from COVID, things happening in Ukraine, which have impacted the project in unusual ways, like not being able to even place an order for stainless steel. We've got a lot of stainless steel on the project. All of those things brought construction cost up. And I was actually pretty delighted when we started opening proposals to see that we had some contracts down in the $220 million range, because they could have come in higher. Of course, there's a lot of risk that contractors had to look at and figure out how to handle in their bid. Now, because the contract has come in higher than we estimated for the engineer's cost estimate and what we originally talked about with our funding application that we submitted at the very beginning of 2021, so about a year and a half ago, we are at a place where I think we're going to have a conversation about replenishing some contingency money. because on a project like this, over half of the project is being constructed underground with underground tunnel construction. It's very easy, of course, to encounter differing site conditions. We go through in our design phase and try to determine what we think the underground is going to look like and establish a baseline for the contractor to work from. But we're out there putting little holes in the ground, determining what the subsurface looks like at locations thousands of feet apart. And things can be different underground when they start that work. So I do believe you get into a large construction contract like this, and change orders are part of the project, especially for a project that has underground work associated with it. So we do want to carry some contingency, and that's a conversation we're having, trying to determine kind of how much contingency we want to carry at this point.
Thank you.
If I can piggyback on that question, when we look at these different price proposals, are we comparing apples to apples? In other words, are the levels of contingencies that they built in, or the pricing that they built in, comparable to each other? I mean, where's the gap coming in? Is it labor prices, mobilization prices, like you talked about? Because I mean, I guess that's the one thought I had in my mind is if Bernard, for example, had built in more contingencies, and we're going to see more change orders for SAK. I was just curious if we're looking at apples to apples.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the difference that you're seeing in the spread of cost is really how the contractors are handling the way that they handle risk. Barnard, for an example, taking the opposite end of the spectrum on the costs that we opened, looked at a lot of the risk like escalation. Our general conditions in the contract don't allow the contractor to come in and say, I've been hit with escalation, I need a change order. So the contractor had to figure out how to handle escalation within their bid pricing. They both bid the exact same work, but Barnard looked at that and said, there's more risk there than I want to carry, so I'm going to cover my escalation with additional contingency on my bid and keep all of that in the contract. Where another contractor decided they wanted to handle escalation a different way within their bid and get more aggressive with it. But at the end of the day, everybody bid the exact same project. It's just the way that they handled their own internal risk.
Aaron, talk about your construction phase services that you're planning to address this.
So one item that you guys, I think, will see next month is our proposal to do construction management. Actually, it'll be a pair of contracts. One, there'll be construction management services from the engineering and construction team. And the other will be a contract from a materials testing firm that does quality control on the project. And when we put together our construction services plan, we actually have the benefit now of kind of understanding the contractor that's coming to complete this work and what level of oversight we want to bring into that process to watch the project be constructed, how aggressive we think that they're aiming to complete it based on schedules that they submitted. So it was very useful for us to kind of delay putting together our work effort and the folks that we want to have on the ground out at that site, being a part of that construction management and oversight, knowing really how these guys want to complete their work. And so the LSAK is fully qualified to complete the project. And we've assembled a team of individuals that we think is the right team and the right level of effort to be out there monitoring that work the way that they want to complete it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
All right, this is an action item.
I move that we approve the resolution authorizing the president to execute a construction contract with the LSAC joint venture for the Phase 2 water delivery system project.
Nice second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Now we'll move to director comments. Vice President Duffy.
Oh, just thank you to everyone and always to the OC and Dan for all your work getting to this point that some of us, when Karen talks about the history, some of us have been here a while, so it's nice to see some of this stuff coming to fruition. So the work is It's very appreciated.
Thank you. Secretary Flores?
Similar comments. I mean, I know it's taken a long time to get here, but congratulations to you, Karen, on your team's efforts, the engineers, the OCs. A lot of time and effort and many years. 1987, 1997, 87, 97. What'd you say? 87, long time. But anyway, congratulations, and look forward to a good project and good timing, and certainly well needed for now and in the future. So thank you all. Good night.
Thank you. Director Kirkland?
Just want to thank everybody. Is it on?
You have to turn it on.
There we go. Sorry. Just want to thank everybody for their work on this project. It's a big deal. It puts us in a position for all of our growth for the next 20 to 30 years, and it's a big deal. Yes, there's been so much effort in this process. Appreciate all three cities for their involvement and their continuous engagement and participation. And everybody have a nice evening.
All right, and Director Baker?
Same comments. I want to thank the staff for doing a good job and all the consultants. Y'all are the smart ones here, but thank you for keeping us on the straight and narrow path. And to the partner cities, these projects take a long time, and we come and go a lot faster than these projects take. And so I'm glad to be here to witness this coming to fruition. And we had some stumbles along the way, but at the end of the day, we've got it done, and we're going to get it done. So congratulations to all the cities. This is a big moment, and this will be a big help to our region for a long time. So thank you all, seriously.
And last but not least, that's me, but I echo everything everyone has said, not to belabor the point. So thank you all for your effort and your time. I'm thankful for the partner cities, and I get to be on the end of it. It's coming to fruition while I'm here, so that's awesome. So thank you, guys. We are adjourned.